but let's start with Japan. All right,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of discussion. As you can imagine, the relatively new Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi, she recently had some pretty provocative comments, or when she was asked by the Japanese Parliament, I think, about Taiwan.
Mhm.
And this is what she said. She said that such actions, particularly involving warships and military force, could constitute a survival threatening situation. You see, that's where it's got very, very immediately China reacted because the survival threatening situation is that the excuse they used last time when they invaded China. That's what
Oh,
they said.
really? Oh,
Yes.
I didn't know. I didn't know. That, by the way, has not been made clear in the media here.
No,
The media has covered the story extensively, but they've not explained that.
no.
Well, that is extremely significant and very, very important
Yeah.
indeed, if I may say. Now, I get the sense that this lady is completely out of her depth. She doesn't understand
No.
the nature of the forces that
Hmm.
she's playing with. And of course, as often happens when people do this and like to posture in this incredibly reckless way, she risks getting Japan involved in something that which would be very, very bad and dangerous for Japan itself. Now, I understand that popular opinion in Japan is to stay out of this whole situation. That despite the fact that the Japanese elite has been moving in a more militaristic, anti-China direction now for quite a long time,
Hmm.
that does not reflect wider opinion in Japan. But anyway, we'll see what comes. I think this could start a reaction within Japan too. And it might be possible that there might even be a political repercussions as well.
And before the World War II, the Japanese aggressions throughout the history, China likes to look at history, right? So
Yeah.
throughout the history, Japan tried a few more times, trying to get to China. You see, Japan is in the location of Japan is kind of like a not very friendly for a human to live because it has volcanoes and earthquakes and
Yeah.
tsunamis. And so it is a very harsh environment that they're living in. And that's why Chinese
Mm.
understanding of the Japanese intention is they always trying to get to the continent, to the land.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
who has the most land? Of course, China. So that's why throughout the Japanese history, they tried. The first time most recorded was during the Tang Dynasty. Of course, they
Yes.
failed, and then they
Yeah.
tried again
Yes.
in the Ming Dynasty. And both times they always occupy the Korean Peninsula first, using that as a
Yeah.
launch pad, and then get to China. So now, of course, last time, the previous two times, they were not even close, but this time was close, right? And the atrocities and all that. So
Yeah.
for China, actually, when Japan says this is survival threatening, for China, this is existential. When Japan claimed that, when Japan really
Abs-
seriously believed that, so
Absolutely true. It's also existential for Japan too to be involved in a
yeah,
conflict with China. Just
yeah,
bear something in mind. Japan engaged in sustained aggression against China starting in the 1890s. I think it was
mm-hmm,
1898 that the
yeah,
war was,
mm-hmm,
going all the way up to 1945.
yeah,
What was the result for Japan? An absolute catastrophe.
yeah,
And that was at a time when China was very weak.
mm-hmm,
I mean, the Qing dynasty was tottering. Cixi, who was, a person of some abilities, but she was clearly not in full control. And anyway, she probably didn't really understand how to contest a conflict with China, with Japan. And besides, the Qing probably didn't have the ability
mm-hmm,
to lead the Chinese people. China was poor. Its economy was in shambles. There was the time of the warlords. There were civil wars.
mm-hmm,
That is not China today. China today is the world's premier manufacturing and industrial power. It is the leader in AI technologies and any number of others. It dwarfs Japan economically. The idea that Japan could want to try again what failed so spectacularly and disastrously before against the much, much more powerful China that exists today is insane. It's madness. And if it were ever attempted, it probably would destroy Japan.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think that is something that people in Japan perhaps do need to understand. Now, I've heard many times of Japan attacking China. I have never heard of a single instance when China attacked Japan. The
Mhm.
Mongols did,
Uh-huh.
but China never did.
No.
China has never attempted to attack Japan. China shows no interest in wanting to attack
Mhm.
Japan. If Japan has problems because of lack of resources and the fact that there's volcanoes and tsunamis and all of those things, well, there's a very simple solution. It gets on good terms with China and it moves forward. I mean, there was a time, I mean, my rice cooker upstairs was bought from a Japanese company, but it was actually made in China. So, I mean, there's all kinds of ways of developing Japan and doing so together with China.
Mhm.
Trying to do it against China is madness. And again, I come back to what I was saying. This lady is completely out of her depth. She doesn't understand what she's talking about. Reviving the rhetoric of that kind of rhetoric is reckless beyond anything I can even say. And I mean, it needs to stop. And I hope people, some more sensible people in Japan, would give her that advice.
Another thing the Western media got it wrong is
Mm,
the translation. One of the things that China did a lot of things to react to this, like discouraged
mm,
Chinese people from traveling to Japan, and it really
mm.
had a big impact because lots of people did cancel their travel
Yeah.
plan to Japan, and also stop buying seafood from Japan, which is a blow to the Japanese seafood industry. Uh, but there is a Chinese consul general in Osaka, and he said the Western translated that that filthy head that changed that charged forward on its own must be cut without hesitation. So this is the translation from his post on X on the social media. I wouldn't translate that way. Based on the Chinese, what he wrote there, you see, in China, there is a concept called a miaotou. Miaotou actually means signs. So it's actually saying when some small head pop up, there is a sign. Okay, what he is saying, this I think, is the Japanese militarism. There seems there is a sign there. So as soon as there is a sign pop up, we should cut
Yeah.
that. That would
Yes.
be my interpretation, my
Yes.
understanding of what he meant. But the West translate that he want to cut off the prime minister's head. That
Yes.
I wouldn't translate that way.
Well, that's nonsense. I mean, obviously he didn't mean to cut off them or suggest that. I mean, that is absurd. But of course, this goes on all the time. Again, as somebody who follows Russian things,
Mhm.
I can tell you for practically every speech that Putin makes is misrepresented, sometimes in grotesque ways. I'll give you an example. I mean, Putin was once asked about, policies of peace, and he says, "Absolutely, I'm in favor of peace. I'm as great an advocate of peace as Mahatma Gandhi was," and he was making a joke. And the West actually then said that Putin claims that he is the new Mahatma Gandhi. It's absolutely ridiculous. There was even an editorial in the Times to that effect. So nothing like that surprises me. And it is one of the great disadvantages that China and Russia both have,
Mhm.
which is that the dominance of English
Yeah.
means that these lies, because they are lies, I mean, these
Mhm.
are deliberate misrepresentations, when they are made, there is no effective counter to them. I mean, for every person like you who explains what this person really meant, you can be absolutely sure that there's all sorts of people on X who are just busy regurgitating the original false translation of this Chinese diplomat's words.
And I think another thing that varying for me is that in Japan the rice, for example, the inflation is really high, and in particular, like the
Yeah.
rice price has gone up really
Yes.
significantly.
Right.
So that now they are putting in coupons. So basically
Mm.
limit the people who can how much they can buy with a certain price. Okay. And then another report that I just saw is that there is a, an increase of Japanese sex workers going overseas, like Australia. They have seen uptick, a significant increase of Japanese sex workers, which is, I would think, unthinkable just a few years ago. Japanese sex workers, but all these, I think, are signs that the Japanese economy are encountering some serious problems. But that isn't that make Japan more dangerous?
Well, it doesn't exactly, and I have to say, I mean, those sort of things are unimaginable. The idea of Japanese sex workers, the very expression would have been inconceivable, and that they would be going abroad,
Mhm.
also inconceivable. And once upon a time, you remember, I worked with Japanese companies
Mhm.
back in the 80s. In those days, Japanese, even businessmen, didn't like going abroad. I mean, I'm talking about serious. It was they were very insular in some ways, but now sex workers. I mean, it boggles the mind. By the way, rice as well. I mean, the
Yeah.
idea of Japan, which always claims to have the best rice. They have all these different categories of rice that they have.
Mhm.
I'm not commenting on whether those claims are ever true. By the way, that's another thing. But I mean, the Japan would be running short of rice is incredible,
Mhm.
and again, it does reflect serious problems in the Japanese economy, and it doesn't surprise me because what has Japan been doing for the last 30 years? 40 years, it's
Mhm.
been trying to reflate its economy all the time. And I understand that this new prime minister is a disciple of Shinzo Abe. And he was trying all the time to create inflation because he thought that inflation would be the way to get the Japanese economy moving again. He had this theory that it was deflation that was the problem in Japan. And of course, what's happening is it's, of course, exactly as one would expect, running out of control. He was a clever and skillful man, whatever you may think. I think he's a much cleverer man than this prime minister we have now.
Yeah, and not only that, even Korea recently called off a joint military drill with Japan because Japanese aircraft recently flown around some disputed islands as well. So she just seems like a very aggressive
Oh,
overall.
she is. She is. Now, I went to Korea. It was a long time ago. It was about 20 plus years ago. But I have to say this, when I was there, the feelings about Japan in Korea were extremely strong. I was surprised at how strong they were. I got a sense that in Korea, which is, of course, occupied by Japan
Mhm.
for many decades, there is a feeling that Japan the feelings about Japan are even stronger than they are in China.
Yeah.
So, talking in this very aggressive way is going to alarm people in Korea too.
Yeah, I think Korean in general, I think their feeling towards China is more, I feel like it's more jealousy. But with Japan,
Yeah.
it's downright, they are very, very worried about Japan all the time, I think.
I think that's absolutely right. Now, when I was in Korea, which I said it was a long time ago now, but the overwhelming sense I got then
Mhm.
was that the sense in Korea was that China was the colossus next door,
Mhm.
whose influence was pervasive. I mean, Korean culture is built around Chinese culture. Korea is a very Confucian society
Uh-huh.
still, and so there's this very complex attitude towards China there, in the sense that it's obviously the model you want to copy, but it's also the giant next door.
Mhm.
So that there's a mixture of admiration, jealousy,
Mhm.
and maybe a certain amount of nervousness. Whereas with Japan, there is no sense of admiration at all. So
Yeah.
it's quite different. I mean, it's much more straightforwardly antagonistic.
The US reaction, Trump's reaction is kind of interesting. On the one hand, when Laurie Ingraham was interviewing him, she
Yeah.
brought this up, and she's the one who's saying, "Oh, they're threatening to cut off the prime minister's head and stuff like that." Trump's reaction actually is kind of interesting. He didn't just say, "Oh, I condemn that. That's dangerous," and that kind. he just said, well, our allies sometimes take advantage of us more than China. So he kind of like diffused, I think, a little bit.
Yes,
And also, the US also pulls the missile system out of Japan that,
yes.
so I feel like on this matter, I think Trump doesn't seem like want to get involved in this, right?
Well, he's just been absolutely smashed by Xi Jinping at that recent meeting. He's now knows that the absolute thing that he must avoid at all costs is getting involved in an economic war with China.
Mhm.
That China holds all the high cards. Um, and the very last thing he wants at the moment, I would have thought, if he's got two brain cells to rub together, is to get into another argument with China over what is essentially a Chinese-Japanese
Mhm.
issue. So for once, I think he was acting sensibly, but you can understand why he would do it. I
Yeah.
mean, uh, it's only just, was it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
that he was meeting Xi Jinping, and I don't think he'd want to go through all of that again.